You were born. Your full name is William Franklin.
William Franklin.
Allee.
Mr. William Franklin.
It's not an Esquire or
No.
Mr.
William Franklin, born January 6, 1922.
So you're about 2 years younger than my dad, or than Willie. He was born in 20. Yeah, he was. He was born in 1920.
Yeah,
so you're about a year and a half, I guess. There. Where were you born?
Lord, I don't remember.
You were young, and you don't.
I was young, and I don't remember. I think Dr. Hurd delivered all of us kids that was born around in this part of the country.
Was it up at what they used to call the old Butler Hospital in Crockett? Because my mom, we didn't know where she was born, or I knew where she was born.
No, we didn't. We wasn't born in no hospital.
Okay.
They just sent us kids off to visit somebody else, and the old Stark would come.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Well, I never did see that Stark. All these younger kids that come along after me, they go out there and look all around and didn't find no Stark droppings or nothing.
But you had a baby, huh? You there with the baby.
Well, I can remember some of them. I think I remember when your mother was born, right here in Crockett. We stayed over at Aunt Susan, John Oliver, and that bunch. John
Oh, I know the bunch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, are they from Huntsville or
they lived in Crockett then.
at the time? Yeah. So she wasn't born in the hospital either. She was just born in Crockett, up there sometime.
At the Gooseby place.
Where is that about?
It's northeast part of Crockett, towards. I can't think of that road that goes out by there now. But it's changed up so much.
Tell us where. Tell me where is Ivy Hill?
Where is Ivy Hill?
Yeah.
Well, you go out 21 to Crockett.
Right.
Take it to the right past the school.
Uh-huh.
And it's right past on a hill behind Lois and Bill's house.
Right. Right.
And it's down a little valley up on the hill.
Yeah. Hey, do you have any idea how it got its name? Or was it just...
Oh, Mr. Neil Ivy
Okay.
owned it
Uh-huh.
for years and years, and I guess he raised a family there, and they moved away, and we moved in that place.
Yeah.
And it just got the name of Ivy Hill.
What was it like?
What was it like?
Yeah, what was it like?
Well, it was
there?
cold in the winter and hot in the summer. We were comfortable. Had our own well up there. Other people in the neighborhood would come and get water out of that well. Best I can remember.
What do you? Something I'd heard my mom say one time, and I think you had said something that on Sundays, if people would come to visit, grown-ups would come to visit, and you'd have dinner, all you kids had to wait until the grown-ups. Do you remember what I'm talking?
Yeah,
about? What was it? What was that now?
Well, I don't guess we had enough to go around the first serving, and then make us kids all stay back and let all the grown folks eat. And Mama would stir up some more gravy and put on some more biscuits, and, and maybe fry another chicken or something, and that way everybody would get something to eat.
I remember
the bad part about that was after the dishes, after everybody had eaten and gone home, me and Johnny May would have to clean up the dishes.
Now Johnny May's your older sister,
my
aunt.
sister,
Yeah.
just older than me, yeah. And she'd wash them and I'd dry them. And we didn't have no trash pickup and nothing like that. So I would take some of them knives and forks and throw them under the house or something like that. Just keep having dry them some other time.
Well, I know that that impression must have stuck with my mom over the years because, just recently she would comment about that and tell me about those Sunday dinners and how that when she was a kid, she would just think to herself, I wish the hell all those people would go home. We are so hungry. And they'd sit around and talk while the kids were hungry.
But there was more or less a routine out there. If this family had the preacher and his wife and 7 or 8 kids, the Sunday before. Somebody else was having the next week. But it was a very close-knit group around Austonio, Ash, and Creek community, over where the old cemetery is. Mr. D. Nettles would be there with his fiddle.
Oh,
Wallace MacDonald, they'd be with the guitar, and W.T. Vaden.
do you remember, was Granddaddy Stewart, was he playing?
Oh, yeah, he
Yeah.
was a good fiddler, too.
That's what I'd heard, that he was a good
He
fiddler.
was a good fiddler.
And we have that fiddle. It got out of the family for a while,
Oh.
and we had a chance to get it back.
Well, stay with it.
And I have it. I have it over at my house in
Might be a Stradivarius.
well, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Now I don't know how to play it, but it's one thing that I wanted was that was that.
Well, bring it up here. I can play it. I won't know what I'm playing.
Well, if you can play it, can you really? Oh.
That's kind of fun.
I want to get recorded because nobody really can remember except you, and I have somewhat of a memory about how Pop and Granny got together and the story about the train. Do you remember that? Do you
Well,
know?
when they got married,
Yeah,
I don't know a whole lot about it, but she was quite a bit younger than him.
right.
His dad was 21 years older than Mama. It never has been discussed an awful lot. It seemed like that some of the folks on one side didn't think that it should happen. And if I keep talking, I might tell a lie here, which I just hate like the devil to lie.
Oh, I know that. I've always known that about you.
If it's a true lie, well, I don't.
Oh.
But, yeah, I think they. My mother was Ms. Fuller then. Lived in an old place there over in the Austonio community, where John Hester and a bunch of them lived. I can't think of that little settlement. But off of Haley Lane.
Oh,
over there.
yeah.
And I think Granny, my grandmother, had put Mama on a train to go back to Houston.
To get away from him.
To get
right?
away from John Allee.
Right.
Because that old man was, he was. But I love my dad. I'm just kidding about him now. And Daddy had this T model, and he knew she was going to be on that train. So before that train took off for Houston, well, Daddy got in that T model and took off towards Houston and made it a point to. He knew it was going to stop in Trinity, which is about 35 miles from Crocker.
Yeah.
Maybe not that far. And Mama got in the car with him, and they got married. So then I think they went on to San Antonio after that, whether it was by train or car. But
Well, he had been married before and had how many kids?
6 living kids.
6 living kids.
And 3, I believe, were born, died little, young.
Right,
Because that was before my time.
right.
And yeah, but then Daddy and Mama, they always had something to eat on the table and kept us pretty well clothed. And what I outgrew, Tommy got, and then what Tommy outgrew, well, I think Mama saved it for Cecil and Kenna, because they had 3 sisters in between there. It's been quite a whirlwind.
Yeah, and Aunt Bet came home one day when she was a child, and her dress was wet. She was about 5 or 6. And what was my mom, 2 years older or so?
She's about 4 years old.
4 years
than
old.
Betty, because there was no pearl in between them.
Well, Aunt Bet was about 5 or 6, and she came home one day and her dress was wet, and she had TT'd on herself. And Granny was getting all over her.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Addie Lois held me down and peed all over me." Now, Granny's name was Isla
May Butler.
Butler.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Pop's name was John Chandler
John Chandler.
Allee.
Allee.
Do you know where he came from? or either one of them? Do you know where they? I know a lot more about the Alford side as
Yeah.
far as the background. I know more about the Allee side as far as me growing up, because they were the fun side. The Alleys, I love the Alfords, but the Allee side, they were the fun bunch to be around. They were absolutely hilarious.
Well, my mother grew up in Houston,
Yes, yeah.
and her mother married this fella, and I guess he must have had some property around Austonio and around, and they moved up here. So that's how Mama and Daddy got together. After my mother married Daddy, Ms. Butler went back to Houston.
I don't know if I've ever known where Pop's family came from. I know he wasn't raised by his mom and dad, was he?
No, his mom died when he was, I think, 11 days old.
Oh,
And Granny Vaden, I don't know a whole lot of her background or anything, because she died when I was real young too. But she died, and then Mom and Daddy got together. And
I want to ask you one more thing, because I've got to get somebody to tell this story about Pop that I've heard all my life, and I'm going to just say the word whitewash and see if you understand what I'm talking about.
yes, that was a black kid that was his buddy
Yes,
down on the farm.
when he was little.
See, now this Sarah Angeline Vaden was Daddy's aunt, and when Daddy's mother died, he was a very small kid, like I say, about 11 months old or something like that. Maybe wasn't that old. And she took Daddy and raised him. And on up until he married Miss Holly Hester, which was his first wife now. And
So he didn't have any white kids to play with.
no, he didn't have any white kids to play with. And I can't think of the black kid's name, but him and everywhere you saw one, you saw the other.
Uh-huh.
Well, Daddy wanted a white boy to play with so many times that he got some whitewash and painted that kid white with this whitewash. I think it was whitewash or something. In other words, he just integrated him and he made a white boy out of it. I didn't know I was getting so old until Bill started asking me these questions.
What was it like growing up in Austonio as you got a little older and went to school? And
Well, I enjoyed going to school down there. I got most of my education at that Austonio High School.
do you remember a story about a principal or a superintendent getting into a shoot 'em up at the school?
Well, that was after I was out of school.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was, I can't remember now who shot who, or who shot whom. And anyway, they got a pretty big scrape there at the school.
I think it was over a woman that they were both dating.
I don't know that now.
Yeah, I think so.
And one of them's name was Lowry.
Yeah.
The one that, he was the shootee, the one that shot Mr. Rasco. And it was quite a stink, because I was already, like I say, out of school then.
But the guy lived.
Yeah, he lived.
The guy did live out of there. Did you walk to school?
Oh, yeah.
Both, was it like my dad used to say, was it uphill, was it barefooted, in the snow, uphill both ways?
Probably.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember having no shoes till I was about 15 years old.
When you walked to school, as my dad would tell me, it would be so cold that you'd go over and where the cows had been lying on the ground, you'd go over and kick them, make them get up, and put your feet there just to warm your feet.
That's one way of warming your feet.
When did you leave Austonio?
Must have been around 1940 or 41.
Did you leave to go into the service or to move to Houston? Or
No, I went to Tommy and I went down to Beaumont and started working down there.
doing what?
We're bellhopped
Oh yeah. Oh,
in the Edison Hotel down there.
in Beaumont.
Leroy McVeigh
Classy.
got us the job, and it was quite an experience.
And here you were just a couple of country boys, and you
Yeah.
moved down to the city.
I hadn't hardly seen electric lights yet.
Did you wear a uniform?
Yeah,
Little bellhop hat?
little red tie, white shirt, blue trousers, and
Yeah.
jacket, blue trousers. Oh, we looked real sharp. I
Oh.
think Tommy wore his back to Austonia one time.
Did you take the train to Beaumont and back, or had you
Went on the bus.
on a bus?
That's when Mack Motor Coach used to come from Bryan
Mm-hmm.
to someplace here in East Texas and come through Austonia. We get out there and flag him down.
Do you remember the story of my dad getting hit by the Model T or the Model A or whatever it was?
I don't remember that.
There were only 2 cars in all of Houston County, and they were coming down through Austonio, and you kids had heard about it. And he ran down there to see it, but he didn't have any experience with cars and how fast they went. And he watched the first one go by, and he stood out in the middle of the road, and the second one came over there and topped the hill and hit him. And he almost died. He laid up in the house there for a long, long time.
Well,
He
your dad never did pay attention.
was-
Excuse me, Bill.
He did. No, it's all right. You can. Where were you when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I was there at Austonia
You remember how you heard about it?
on some little ham, not a ham radio, but one of these battery-operated radios. I'm sure that's where it was when I heard about it, because J.C. was drafted shortly after that.
Now, that's my Uncle Jiggs.
Yeah, and that's when shortly after that went to Beaumont started working,
Right.
and that's where I got drafted from, was Beaumont.
Okay. All right. You were there, and you were drafted into the Army.
Yeah, in
Okay.
1942,
All right.
December 31st, 1942.
Okay. Where did you go after you were drafted for? I guess you call it boot camp or basic training. Oh.
Yeah, the separation center was a collection center where they sent us out to all different camps.
Yeah.
And there was 19 of us Texas boys. I ended up in a company of Yankees and Wops, but everything you think of from New York. And I stayed there after I was left Fort Sam Houston, the staging center. I ended up at Camp Swift over at Austin.
And how long were you there? Just 6 weeks, or?
No, I stayed there about 3 months, I guess, and we went on maneuvers in Louisiana for 60 days and went back to Camp Swift. And they shanghaied me and 18 other guys over to a company. But this was before, I'm getting ahead of myself again. We went from Camp Swift, we went to Fort Benning, Georgia. And that's when I got transferred over to another company. And they were going overseas. They had to have so many men. And they took, like I say, 18 of us out of this particular company. And was transferred to the 71st Engineers. And we left Fort Benning and went to Hampton Roads, Virginia, and was put on a ship going overseas.
Well, let's see. You were you transferred. You were in Louisiana, and you were with a bunch of Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of experience was
Oh,
that?
we're recording now?
Yeah.
Oh, we went on maneuvers for 6 weeks in Louisiana in 1943. And back to Camp Swift, and from there we were sent to Fort Benning, Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
training for overseas work or priming us for it and so on. And we left there and went to Norfolk, Virginia, and got on an old rattletrap ship, the USS Guin, a cargo ship. 540 of us on it, all sleeping in hammocks.
Oh my! Below decks, or
yeah. And we went top deck though, because it got so hot.
Right.
Down in that thing, very poor ventilation. The guys getting seasick, and their bunks were 4 high, and you had about 18 inches or 2 feet of space to roll over, and then another guy right on top. I managed to get on the top bunk. Of course, I got wind of what was going on. There, one of them guys that have beans for supper.
It would all rise up there.
You know, gas is lighter than air. And we was on that doggone ship all the way to Oran, North Africa, and pulled in that Oran harbor and saw all the sunken ships during the first part of the war. See, this was maybe almost a year after the war had started till I was drafted. And Germans had sank just boat after boat in this harbor.
And it was somewhere in North Africa?
Yeah, out Oran, North Africa.
Okay.
Then we went from about a little narrow gauge train over to Algiers, Algebra, whichever, I don't know which it was. And they put us on this LST, landing ship tank.
Landing ship tank, right.
And we thought we were going to Italy, putting us on that small ship. There's 45 of us plus the crew on that LST. And we just knew we were heading for Italy, but we went on through there and through the Suez Canal into the Indian Ocean.
Wow.
And somehow or another this LST burned up a motor, and we pulled into Colombo, Ceylon, where they had the big earthquake or whatever, tidal wave here last year.
Yeah.
And we were there for, I guess, 6 weeks waiting on that thing to get repaired. And they finally got it repaired, and they took it on a shakedown cruise and went around the island there to Trincomalee. That's Kashmir state, like just where the wealthy folks live.
Is that like kind of like India, Kashmir?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just Sri Lanka is the island off of South India.
Right.
So we stayed there for about 6 weeks, I think, and had Thanksgiving dinner there, and Christmas dinner. We had gotten on that ferry that connects Sri Lanka with India. On a ferry, and went across there and got on a narrow gauge train and was on it for about 3 or 4 days, and had Christmas dinner in Madras, India, at a British camp.
I have heard so many stories of World War II from the European front and then from the Pacific, but you're the only person I've ever known who was in the China, Burma, India theater, and I'd always wondered how you ended up there.
Well, that's just my luck.
That was and that wasn't a good place to be. What was it like?
Well, it was a beautiful country, Burma especially, the Burmese people. I have all the respect in the world for the Burmese people.
Yeah.
Because they were, to me, they were more intelligent, or they were harder workers and all than the Chinese and the Indians were. But under their conditions, I guess it was the best they could do. I'm not knocking either country.
Right.
Because they helped in the war and all this. But we went on from that Christmas dinner in I might have said Karachi a while ago, but it was Madras, India.
Yeah, but
I think that's part of Pakistan, I'm not sure. It's so many little countries there that's got their own governments, or whatever you might call it, but I believe most of them were under British rule.
at one time they
One
were.
time, yeah.
When did things start getting rough? Where did you go, and when did things start getting really tough during the war?
Well, when it first started getting, when we finally realized we were actually in a war, was when we were still on that bigger boat coming from the U.S. We entered the Strait of Gibraltar and passed by the Rock of Gibraltar.
Yes.
All blackout and everything, and you wouldn't go on deck at night with a cigarette lit or nothing. And then we, like I said, we end up in Madras, India on that Thanksgiving Day.
And then when you got on into Burma, how did things develop from Burma? Did you break down into smaller squads? What did you do?
No, we were the 71st Engineers. We were a light pontoon company.
Okay.
Building these floating bridges. And there was just one company of us. There wasn't no regiment or battalion or nothing. They said, okay, pack up. We're going to put a bridge across Tarung River, or the Tanai River, or the Irrawaddy, or there's about 6 or 8 rivers in that particular area that we were in combat on.
How would you put the bridges up?
Well, they would fly us guys up one at a time to a landing strip close to where we were.
Yeah.
And we would be under fire from the Japanese.
What kind of small arms or
Small arms, mortar and artillery. We built one bridge there. We usually try to build them bridges late in the evenings or early in the morning and keep it as quiet as you can, but you got about 15 or 20 outboard motors running back and forth across that river, ferrying stuff here or there to put on the bridge. And we would just get that bridge built and we'd move back out of the way. Just leave it for the Chinese and Americans to hold the front and get the infantry across the bridges.
When you first come under fire, what did you think?
I said, man, I've been on quail hunts that wasn't near this dangerous. Anybody that says that they wasn't scared or wish they had never heard of the Army, I think you're going to find a liar.
Yeah.
Because it's not very comfortable to pick a place to hang your jungle hammock. We didn't have tents or nothing to sleep in when we was under combat. We slept in jungle hammocks. They'd drop our rations to us and old C-46s. And one thing that really would stick with you was them doggone leeches over there. And
Leeches?
these, scorpions.
Yeah.
They would be maybe a scorpion 8 inches long, crawl up your leg. And we learned one thing, never thump him from the head down to knock him off of you. Cock your leg up, thump him from his butt up, and that keeps his claws from sticking in you, because when them claws stuck in you, you would end up with a darn ball.
I'll be.
And I got a spot right here on my shoulder where I picked a leech off of me one night, laying up there real comfortable in that little jungle hammock, and I got to scratching, and that leech had sucked blood out of me
My goodness.
until he was big as an egg. And a darn leech is not over an inch long and about the size of a toothpick, but you never feel them when they get on you.
Did you have to be evacuated at one time from a spider bite or
Yeah.
something like that? And
Yeah, this was the last mission that we went on. We were on the Irrawaddy River, and we had we had ferried the Chinese 38th Division, a bunch of that group, across this Irrawaddy River. and were sleeping in these jungle hammocks. And I woke up that morning and I looked up. They had a little shelter half over the tent to keep the monsoon rain from getting on you so bad. And I noticed this little spider up there, and I reached up and thumped him, and he hopped down there and bit me right under my chin here. And in 2 hours' time, I was swelled up and black, about to choke to death.
Goodness.
And an old boy there with us who got shot, and they had called in this old C-46, I think is what it was, a hospital plane to pick us up. And it was a short runway for him to take off on. So when they put us on the stretcher, and the crew chief said, "Okay, now you guys stay right against this bulkhead up here, because it's going to be a short takeoff."
And steep too, steep
Oh,
takeoff.
yeah.
Oh yes.
And when he got off, I know the plane didn't drop, but it just sounded, expecting it to. I felt like it dropped about 6 feet. And he pulled up then, he flew back over the guys and rocked his wings to let you know that he was off and going. And that they had dropped us a bunch of supplies from this plane before they landed. And they just flew with the door open, on back to the landing strip. And Weaver and I were against the bulkhead up there, and I was the closest one to that door.
And that door was open.
And that door was open. And when he went up in that climb, my stretcher started sliding. And it went just as straight for that door. And I can still hear my fingernails scraping on that aluminum floor in that plane. Crunch! About 30 or 40 feet down through there, and I finally hit that bulkhead. And a little bit, that crew chief come out of wherever he was, said, "What are you doing way back there? We told you to stay up here." I said,
Because your throat was swelled up. You
my throat was dry, and I was scared. I couldn't talk. I just made him understand. I like to went out that mother. And good part about that trip, though, when we got back to Bomo in Burma there, and I got in the hospital and situated, well, Jinx Falkenberg, the famous tennis player, Joe E. Brown.
Oh, the comedian.
Yeah.
Right.
And several bigwig stars were there putting on a USO show. Well, this Jinx Falkenberg come back through the ward there. And one of the nurses in the hospital told me, said, "Now these two guys here just come from the front. If you want to know something, well, just ask them." And I tell you, that was the prettiest woman, the best smelling woman. Had on them pretty blue shorts, a little white halter, that hair done up like a woman king. And of course I was feeling too bad about that time, or kind of nervous and shook up, that I didn't get to go to the show that night. But then the next night they gave us a pass to go, not a pass, but gave us permission to leave the ward and go over and see the show.
And I bet you enjoyed that.
Oh yeah, it
You've
was a lot of fun.
been gone. Was there, I don't know if it was you, do you know a story about a leopard and a flashlight? An old carbide, shake 'em up flashlight?
Oh yeah, yeah. Me and Wan Shu Mang, Chinese guy, got to like pretty good, and he would teach me English, and I mean Chinese.
Oh well, he might have taught you some English.
We were on bridge guard that night, and they had an American and a Chinese on one end of the bridge, and American Chinese on the other side. Well, I had left my post and tried to cross the river to just chat with that other American that was there. And somehow or another, the Chinaman had wandered away from his post, and I was trotting back there and back across the bridge, just real happy. Had these old gooseneck flashlights that burned half the time they wouldn't. And I noticed a couple of eyes up there on the bank. And I don't know, what could them little red lights be? There ain't no electricity out here. And I shake that old light, shine it again. And I got up about 20 or 30 feet from that thing, and them little eyes raised up, and it was a leopard. Of course, I didn't hang around that long. I went back across the river burning rubber on that bridge.
It's a wonder he hadn't gone up to it, thought it was a dog or something, and tried to kick it or something.
Yeah. If I'd have known it, because we had everything from python snakes.
You saw the pythons?
Oh yeah, we killed one 18 feet long in our tent area one night.
Good gracious.
And he had swallowed an iguana, one of these big lizards that would weigh about 60 pounds.
Good gracious.
I got a picture of it over there somewhere.
Good gracious.
And but you talk about hunting, boy. You go out there and we get tired of them sea rations and stuff. And we go out. We talked the captain into giving us some bullets for our carbines.
And this was an M1, or what did you carry in your?
Oh, it was a carbine.
Okay.
I had the 03, that old World War II rifle to start with. But
The 303, the British?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we graduated down to the carbine because it was a good little rifle. It was light and easy to load and everything. And we'd go out and kill dove in them bamboo.
Doves?
Doves,
Yeah.
And we go out and kill these doves, or we could kill deer or anything like that.
Yeah.
There was 2 or 3 Bengal tigers killed, and guys in our company. But when I saw that leopard there all hunkered over that night, it was a pretty thing, but I didn't care to make friends with it. Yeah, that night there.
Well, when I was a kid, you would either come over to our house or we would come over to your house on the weekends. I think, was it the Wednesday night fights or the Friday night fights?
Wednesday night.
Wednesday night, Gillette Cavalcade fights, right? And you would be telling these stories, and I was just a little thing. But now, some 50 years later, if you think I wasn't paying attention and remembering those stories, I remember. You had an incredible experience in, was it in Burma, in a tree?
It's a tree that grows kind of like a magnolia tree does here in the States. Only it's a much bigger tree, and the roots just pick the tree up, and you can get in under that. Well, I was on guard duty that night, not guard duty, but they took guys up there as directors, that is, to show the convoy which way to go. Well, they took me up there about 3 miles from my camp and dumped me out, not knowing that there was some Jap troops still in that area. And I had picked this old tree out because I could crawl in under them roots and stuff and be out of sight until I saw a truck or Jeep or something coming through there, maybe a convoy. And I'd go out there and tell them to take this turn, that turn, and so on. And these Japanese come so close by that I knew they wasn't speaking Chinese, and I was the only American there. And I wasn't about to holler, "Hey, here I am." And they came within, I guess, 25, 50 yards of where I was on that post there. But I got in under the roots things on that old tree. And them Japs, their uniforms would get wet and just stink like mildew or something. And they come close enough that I could smell them.
Wow.
I said, well, I ain't going to move from here. I done forgot a whole lot about that particular story, but I remember it.
But you stayed in that tree the whole night, right? Up under those roots.
Yeah.
And the Japanese soldiers were just all around you.
All around.
And you could hear them talking.
Oh, yeah.
And carrying on. How in the hell did you get out of that?
I just got in under the biggest roots that I could find and just sat there just as quiet as I could. And I was just having a fit for a cigarette, and I wouldn't have lit one for nobody. 'Cause when you can hear them jabbering in that language, if it had been Chinese, I could have probably interpreted enough of it to know that
Because
they
you
were,
do speak Chinese.
Huh?
You do speak Chinese.
a little bit.
Well, I've heard him. Maybe you've forgotten him, but I've heard him in the past, and he speaks pretty well. He speaks pretty well.
Yeah, it's kind of
Chinese.
surprising to go into this China buffet up here and
Uh-huh.
go in there and start jabbing Chinese.
Right.
That old boy that runs it is like you walk in and to say how you do or something like that. You
Yeah.
say, "Haba hapung yo, wo means Pete Allee." He bug his eyes. And said, "What?" I said, "Wo means Pete Allee. That means my name is Pete Allee."
Yeah.
And I said, "Haba ha," that means you're good or no good. That's a greeting, like good morning or good evening.
Yeah.
And know a whole lot of other stuff that wouldn't be good to
That
put
you-
on
that
tape.
When you were in the tree, or up under the tree with
Yeah.
with all the roots, and the Japanese were all around you, did they just leave the next morning?
They were just marching through because Merrill's Marauders were just ahead of us.
Merrill's Marauders.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they were just ahead of us. Well, these Chinese come in behind them, and why I don't know. But I stayed in them under that old tree till about noon the next day, and I kept wondering, well, why in the hell have they sent me up here? Not going to come back and get me, because I've been up here all night. And directly I heard a Jeep motor coming. Well, they coming to pick me up. They were coming to get me, and the sergeant got it. Why the hell did you leave your posting over here? I said, this is where y'all left me, and this is where I stayed. Because they were Japanese all around me all night. He said, it wasn't supposed to be. I said, I know there wasn't supposed to be. You just dropped me off the wrong darn place. So I'd like to got the sergeant fired, and I'd have tried to take his place. But
You were a private during
Yeah.
most of the war.
I
think I'll let you tell the story, but I think you got promoted a few times and then demoted a few times.
Well, I did get promoted a couple times. I maintained my privacy most of the time that I was in service. And there was about 4 or 5, and before the war ended though, they had made it a rule that anybody that had been overseas for a year or 6 months or something, I forgot which, would automatically be made PFC. So they made me and old Paul Gardner from Joplin, Missouri, gave us our PFC stripes. And said the captain had the bugler to blow a bugle call, formation. He come out there, he's a hell of a good guy. Kind of a fella, he didn't mind taking orders from.
Right.
And he said, the reason we're holding this formation today, I want it to be known that Private Allee and Private Gardner, you will be addressing him as PFC. So Paul Gardner says, Captain, don't expect no miracles. And it was quite a ceremony, but
How did you hear, being off in the boonies like that? How did you hear about the end of the war?
well, we were up in China when that was over. We were
Okay, so you'd gone from Burma on into China,
Yeah.
and did you see action in there as well?
Not a whole lot, because the Chinese had already pushed the Japanese on out of Burma into China. And we had a little old radio up there, a battery-operated radio run off of a generator. And up in China, we were just more or less maintaining the Burma Road from where we went into Burma and up into China. The farthest I ever got was up in China was a town called Poshan, and that's where Marco Polo Trail started.
Really?
Yeah, and it went from there. That Marco Polo Trail, I believe, went from Poshan, China, to someplace in Sweden, and it was a pretty historical place.
Yes.
It wasn't much to the town or nothing. It was just bamboo huts and bamboo forest and snakes and spiders and mud and, and rain. The monsoon rains give us more trouble than most of everything, because we would build one of these pontoon bridges. It would be build a rubber rafts, and then we'd lay piling across it and then put a floor on it, and you could take a tank across on it, small tank and trucks.
So you heard of the end of the war then on a radio out there. Did they announce that it was an atomic bomb, or?
That I don't remember, but they just said a big bomb, and we had never even heard of an atomic bomb. But that brought them to their knees, and it took us another 3 or 4 months to get our junk all together. And I often think of this. Here now we're paying $3 or something for a gallon of gas.
Right.
I don't know how many drums of gasoline we threw in them rivers over there, and then shot them with rifles to burn them up, and just went off.
Well, just because you couldn't bring them back, it was just not practical.
Cheaper to do that than it was to try to load it on ship it back to Calcutta or somewhere.
When you found out about an atomic bomb, you know, past being just a big bomb, that it was an atomic bomb, did you understand? Did people understand what it was?
No, we just, on the news we got was that it was a secret weapon that had been worked on for 3 years or 2 years, something like that, before they got it perfected.
Right.
And the first one we ever heard of was when they dropped some in Japan.
Right. You know, a lot of people are trying to rewrite history now, and I don't agree. I have my own thoughts about it. I'm not sure that I would be here today if it hadn't been for us dropping the atomic bomb.
I don't think we would either.
You would have ended up as part of the invasion of Japan, most likely.
Yeah.
And my dad, who had served in Europe, told me the story of when the war in Europe was over, and they put him on a ship, and they all assumed they were coming back to the States. And one morning, he walked up, was allowed to go up top, and he looked, and he said, "Oh my God, this is the Panama Canal." And he knew that if they were going through the Panama Canal, they were headed for the Pacific. And then he went on to the Philippines, and he was there staging, ready for the invasion of Japan. And I've always believed that a lot of people that I know wouldn't have been around.
That's right.
If we hadn't have done it. And I think it probably saved Japanese lives as well.
Yeah. It's estimated that there would have been 12 million Japanese killed
Good gracious.
if that war hadn't ended, and at least 6 million, I believe it was, of Allied troops that would have been killed.
Yeah.
And we was on that hillside there, close to Wanting, China. That's a little village just as you go from Burma into China. And we was on the hillside there, and just some reason we were staying up listening to the little radio there. And they announced on there that there had been a couple of bombs dropped that will be very significant in wrapping this war up, in which it did.
Yes.
And I believe 12th of August or something like that.
So you got back on a transport ship out of where to come back to the States?
Well, they when we left, we was up in China when the war ended, and they put us on planes and flew us back to Karachi, Pakistan. And by the way, on that trip, that pilot circled the Taj Mahal.
Really? And you could look out and see it?
Oh yeah, it was a beautiful looking.
Wow.
Big old white, looked like white marble or something like that. All them rubies on the windows and stuff.
Oh, wow.
He flew down, I guess, maybe 200 feet above it.
Good.
Then we landed out in Karachi, and that's where we stayed about Oh, 4 or 5 days, and they put us on another boat then to come home.
And where did you come back? Where did you land when you came back?
We landed in New York.
In New York. So you went through the Panama Canal to get back, or
No,
did
we
you go
went-
back around through south of Africa and back that way? I guess.
We come back from Karachi, come
Uh-huh.
through there, the Suez Canal,
Right. Right.
and Egypt on one side
Yeah.
of us. And
So back through the Mediterranean and
Yeah.
then across there, and you came into New York, which
And,
you had a lot of experience with then, because you'd been around all those damn Yankees all that time, right?
yeah, I thought more of the Chinese than I did them.
What did you think about New York at the time when you were there?
New York is a pretty town to go to.
Yeah.
If you like to hear the car horns blowing, and you pull up to a red light, and there's a car, be 40 cars behind, and that light changes, you're front row up there. That 40th car back there, beep, 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 get out of the way. Why? There ain't no way there. And it's about like Calcutta, 'cause Calcutta had them streetcars over there, double-deckers. And I could tell you a story. This was supposed to have happened in London, where they got the double-decker buses. This American GI got on the they called it the trolley or
Or the underground, or like a subway or
something
something.
like a streetcar,
Oh yeah.
double-decker.
Hmm.
Anyway, this GI got on there with his leg all bandaged up, plaster Paris and all, and there was you go to either double deck or climb the ladder or steps and go up on top deck. Well, he wanted a seat down there, so there was a old British lady on there with her monocle glasses and holding that little dog. I had a little dog taking up a seat there by her. He said, "Lady, would you mind if I sat down here?" She said, "Well, no, Yank, you shall not. That's my dog, and you go up a deck." And he just grabbed the little dog, threw it out the window. And there was an old Scotchman sitting over across the aisle there from him with that crooked pipe, raised his glasses. "I say, Yank, you guys never cease to amaze me. You put sugar in your tea to make it sweet. You put salt in your tea, or lemon in your tea to make it bitter." On and on and on, and he says, "And now you have thrown the wrong bitch out the window."
Oh goodness. How did you get back from New York to, where did you come back to, Alstonio or?
Well, I came back to Camp Fanning over here, Tyler.
Uh-huh.
I was discharged from there. They put us on a train, and boy, we rode first class coming back.
Yeah.
Each one of us had a good, comfortable bunk. Well, back, 4 of us had a state car. That's where the big wigs stayed. We just took that thing over, and nobody said nothing about it. So we just, from New York we rode it to St. Louis, I believe, changed trains, and then
Right.
on into Camp Fanning.
And then from there, you made your way back to here, somewhere around.
Yeah, got from Camp Fanning. I got on the bus, and I hadn't had a real good shot of whiskey in so many years, till I just said, "Heck, I'm gonna go back to Beaumont for a couple of days."
Uh-huh.
They gave me my mustering out pay. I had about $300 worth of back pay coming. I got on that bus, went down to Beaumont, and went back to that same hotel I used to bellhop at.
Yeah.
And got in there a good, comfortable room. Next morning, I went downtown there and got me a tweed suit, a pair of sharp-toed shoes,
That's great.
and a hat. One thing I regret, I left my barracks bag and the more Army clothes in that hotel.
Oh.
I said, I don't want to see the Army no more. I'm through.
I was going to ask, did you tie one on there while you were? That's the only.
I didn't get real drunk because I figured if I got drunk, I'd go to the wrong place for a while and I'd get rolled and I'd lose the rest of my $200.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that happened to in the family here somewhere, one way or another. But I'll say this, that it was a very educational trip. It makes you appreciate what we have here.
Yes, yes. Well, we wouldn't have had it without people like you. But you eventually made your way back to Ostonio, or did you go to? When did you go to Houston to start working? And
yeah, after I stopped off in Beaumont and got me some civilian clothes, I took that little bus, Max Motor Coach, come up through Groveton and all in places like that, and back through Ostonio to Madisonville. And when I got home that night, I must have got there about, I'd say around 8 o'clock. Got off that little Mack Motor Coach bus, and we lived right there in Ostonio, so I just picked up my little suitcase. And
okay, across from where the Ostonio stop is.
yeah.
Now, okay. All right, you had moved from Ivy Hill, or they had moved.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one thing the way that I knew I was home that night, when I stepped up on the porch of that old house there, I heard that old clock. Boom, boom. I said, "Well, Pete, you made it."
Wow.
I
Wow.
was having some kind of activity up to school up there. Mom and Daddy and Cecil and Kenneth and Betty and all of them was all up to that thing. So I went on in the house and looked around and found some homemade biscuits and some taters and beans and stuff like this. And I walked on up to the church, to the schoolhouse up there, and sure enough, there was Mom and Daddy and all of them in there. And we had quite a reunion
I
like that.
bet so.
Were you wearing your tweed suit?
Oh yeah, I
Yes.
had that, man. Yeah, that tweed suit. I traded that tweed suit to Petey Morgan for one he had that I liked better than the one I had bought. And I saw Petey Morgan with that suit on that I had traded him at some kind of affair, and I had on the one he had traded me, the suit he traded me. I walked up to Petey. I said, "Boy, you sure do look good in them clothes I gave you." And we like to fault right there.
Well, I bet they were glad to see you when you walked into the school.
Yeah.
It was quite a reunion, I bet.
Yeah.
And I know you were glad to see them. It was just amazing that you made it through there. I don't really want to go back and dwell too much because you've told us so well about your experiences there. Did you get into any firefights, as they're called?
Combat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know that they were shooting at you while you were trying to put up the bridges and all. But did you ever get your weapon out and just give them holy hell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I hit anybody or not, but I scared them off anyway.
Yeah.
But no, they counterattacked us one night there. We were building one of these a footbridge for some infantry guys to get across, and I think it included Merrill Marauders. So
Wow.
anybody that knows anything about Merrill Marauders, well, they know how close that was to the front.
Right.
And we lost several guys over there.
Did you lose anybody that you were close to while you were there? You did.
That's the part that's kind of hard to talk
I
about.
understand. We'll just you've told us so much incredible stuff there. How did you end up going to Houston, and you worked for Ethel Corporation? What?
Yeah, that was before I went to work for Allee Corporation. I went down to Houston there, and I took a vocational training job on
Oh, really?
a grade 2 company.
Yeah.
They would hire people and train you to be machinists or something like that. And I worked for them about 3 years, I guess, 2.5, 3 years. And from there, I just followed the machinist trade or craft or whatever you want to call
Right.
it, on up until I retired from Ethel Corporation.
And you worked there at Ethel for how many years?
I must have worked there about 21 years.
It was a long time that you worked
Yeah.
for them. When did you retire and move here? We're in case people don't know, we're in Golden Acres, and it's a lovely place. It's just outside of Crockett, just off of Houston County Lake, and it's just a darling place. You have a wonderfully comfortable house. I have always enjoyed coming out here to visit. It's just been great. When did you retire and move here?
In 83.
83.
1983.
And you were telling me the story before I had the recorder going. Tell me again about you and my dad. How you decided, or you were in Pasadena and decided to move here, or what?
Yeah.
What did you tell me that again?
Well, they come up with a deal there where I was working then that anybody that been there longer than 20 years, they would give you a bonus to quit and let them get some new, younger faces around here. So naturally, I jumped at the chance to get
Sounds like a good idea.
$300 or $400 in my pocket and not have to work for it.
Right.
But anyway, I got a bunch of good friends here, and in the neighborhood out here, well, I know everybody and get along good with them. In fact, my neighbor just come over the day before yesterday and mowed my grass for me. So you can't find neighbors in
No. And on Friday nights for a long time now, you've enjoyed going to, is it the VFW?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
American Legion.
American Legion, okay. American Legion.
Yeah, there's a group of us up there. Us old, wore-out GIs get around and tell some of these war stories, and we have us a few, I would say, strong coffees.
Just a little something added there.
Huh?
You just add a little something to your
Oh,
coffee.
yeah.
Okay.
Like a guy used to know that said that when he would get drunk and he had his wheel up. And he said, boy, it's been a long time since my wheel been this high. Well, there's a good group that meet up there. And, about 6 couples of us a lot of time up there. And
When you were growing up, you ran around with my dad as a kid, right?
yeah,
Y'all just were buddies, or
we were buddies when we even in high school.
really?
We've had some pretty good honky-tonk experiences and stuff. But that was before I quit drinking.
Yeah.
Pour me another one, honey.
I have some great pictures of you guys, my mom, my dad, you, and who all knows what pretty women there were. Taken at some of these honky-tonks, Blue Parrot or something like that in Houston.
That was that Autotel Blue Room
Blue Room, okay.
on Beaumont Highway.
Okay, all right.
Bunch of us out there one night, and then really we was, all of us just laughing, carrying on. There was a couple at a table, a couple of couples at a table behind us kept listening over what we was finding so much to laugh about. And I punched Willie and I said, that guy behind you sure is nosy. Willie looked around there and he said, I'll fix him. So he had just opened the 7-Up. Took it, put his thumb over it, shook it up real good. He wet that guy down. And he'd come up from there wanting to fight. And I said, wait a minute. There ain't gonna be no fighting around here. We're gonna get thrown out. They ain't gonna throw me out. I say, all right, you start something, they're gonna throw your butt out of here. So he kind of calmed down and went to laughing. I think he joined our crowd. Of course, some of these tales I ain't gonna tell you.
Well, I wish you would. I know. I know. They're-
Too nosy.
Yeah, well, I get that way. I always have been. Can't help it. I get it from my Uncle Pete as far as being like, I like to talk. I always like to talk. And Uncle Pete is one of, and it's a sign of intelligence, I think. Uncle Pete is without a doubt the funniest man I've ever known in my life. He has always had the greatest sense of humor and the quickest wit of anyone that I have ever known. I have just loved this man all of my life. I've paid attention to everything he's ever said. And a lot of that came from our trips to Lake Buchanan and some of our deer hunting experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Those were some incredible times. Can you talk about the little shack that we built at Walter Davis' place in was it Madison County? Yes, outside of
I believe
Madisonville.
County, Madison County.
right.
Now, we enjoyed that place up there. We went up there one time and bought a hog and put him in the trunk of that old car. And closed the lid down and left it where the hog could get some air, not smother him. And we got back to Pasadena. That hog had got unhappy back there, and he chewed the wires out of the trunk of that car. We didn't have no lights or nothing.
I was with you, and I remember that.
Remember that little? We'd sit around there after dark or after we quit hunting, have our beers and get about half silly and we'd write little poems.
Yeah.
On the
Oh,
wall.
I'd forgotten about
One
that.
of them.
This
yeah,
now this is in the deer shack that
Yeah.
we built. Okay, it was a one-room shack, had cardboard walls on it, and it had bunks for us
Yeah.
to sleep on that you and my dad had built, and it had a potbelly stove. It had a potbelly stove because originally we had a kerosene heater in there, and my dad had asthma, and he just damn near died one night. And do you remember when we woke up the next morning? We were black as the ace of spades. All of us were covered with that.
Soot from that.
Yes,
We had burned up all the oxygen
yes, it
in
had.
that little shed. If
Yep.
we'd have slept another 2 hours, we'd all died.
I think so.
Willie woke up that morning and looked over at me and said, "Hey," he looked again. He said, "I can't see nothing but your eyes and your teeth." That soot was all over us.
Yeah.
Another time I went up there when we got the hog and took it over to the market to kill it. And we chased that hog around there for about an hour before we caught it. And we went back and got about half howl by Jack Daniel and stuff. Wrote a little note up there. The weather is cold and the wind is high. Drunk as hell. We'll get by, something like that.
I remember that 42 degrees and something
Yeah.
you'd written. We had built an outhouse, and we'd built it out of canvas to cover it, and it was a very nice outhouse. There was one particular night that he was sitting on the pot, and a big windstorm came through, and although it was a nice outhouse with a canvas covering, that canvas covering kind of acted like a wind sail. And it just blew the damn thing over with Uncle Pete in it, with his pants down around his ankles.
I wouldn't told that. Oh, Lord.
We had some wonderful times there. Two of them that I want you to recall, if you can, because I do. One time, I heard a whole bunch of shots. You had a 30-30. I think we were all using 30-30s. And I heard 7 shots, just as fast as they could be. And we thought that maybe you'd killed a deer. And we went over, and it was Uncle Pete, and he'd gotten cold, and he had shot 7 times as fast as he could with that 30-30 into a tree or something. And he had his hands wrapped around the barrel of the 30-30, because when you shoot rapidly like that, the barrel gets real hot. He did that so he could warm his hands up. You were up in the tree in a deer stand, and Jimmy was at the base of a tree with a 22 single shot, and he had a short. Now a short is a little bitty 22 bullet.
Yeah,
I don't know what had happened to my Uncle Pete, but for some reason he was asleep up in the tree. And a shot went off, and Jimmy was 6, maybe 7, something like that. And a little buck had walked up, and you didn't see it, and it walked up, and Jimmy saw it, and he waited and waited, and that little buck just kept coming right straight toward him and straight toward him, and he kept waiting for you to shoot, and you never did shoot. So Jimmy fired, and with a 22 short, hit that buck right dead between the eyes, and killed that deer.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I remember Jimmy stepped on something way back in the woods
Oh
there.
yeah, stepped on an old rusty nail.
Yeah.
And you brought him back you brought him back piggyback.
I did. I carried him for I don't know how far, but
2 miles anyway.
a couple of miles on my back, and I was a little bit older than Jimmy, but I'm tell you, he was getting kind of stout, and that because not only was I carrying him, I was carrying 30-30, and I was carrying his 22 or 30-30, whatever he was carrying at the time, and him, and I was very, very, very damn glad when we got back there. We spent a lot of time at Lake Buchanan as well. It was a wonderful place to fish, wasn't it, at one time?
Oh man, I love it up there. We were going to Buchanan that time, and you and Jimmy was in the back seat, and Willie and I were driving and pulling the boat up there, and Lois and Ruby had already gone on ahead with the girls in y'all's car. And we had us a happy beer on the way.
Oh, yes.
Just cruising along there, minding our own business. And we topped the hill, and at the bottom of the hill there sat a patrol car. And he flicked his light on, so I just pulled on around him and stopped in front of him. Hey, Fred, you're going a little fast there pulling that boat. I said, well, it's a nice sunny day and just going fishing. And he talked on there, and I knew he could have smelled a beer or something, but he did give us a ticket. He said, you guys better slow it down because they're going to be looking for you down the road further. And I had always taught Jimmy and Kathy that if they ever lost in a department store or a mall or something, go to the policeman and tell them who you are, and they'll find Mom and Daddy. So Jimmy, he remembered that, and when the policeman started to leave, that patrolman started to leave us, they said, now take care, just slow down, go on and have a good time. Real likable person. And Jimmy's about 4 or 5 years old, stuck his head up there. He said, was that a good policeman, Daddy? I said, it sure was. He didn't give us a ticket. He said, why don't you give him a beer? That guy just hit himself like that. Goodbye, y'all. Oh, these kids can pull some things off. But you just love them to death.
Yes.
But I can truthfully say that Willie and I brought our sons up. Like everybody, I think. Not everything we've done was all right, but we didn't lead them the wrong way or nothing. And I consider Bill and his dad Willie two of the best friends that I've ever had, and I love them like brothers. And if every dad had taken up the time with their sons, they would be proud of them.